Hello everyone, and here we are ready to review the second trimester exam and go over the resources. As you began this test a couple of months ago, we opened up with grammar. So everyone participating would go with his or her. Both would be plural, so we go with are. Compound subject joined by or agrees with what's closer. So Bohemian Rhapsody was. The Green Book was the Oscar winner, and the Green Book is one movie. Neither Mary, compound subject joined by or nor, agrees with what's closer. Team members were. The family, okay, this was the one I was talking about. Sometimes a collective noun, when it's operating as separate individuals, will take a plural verb. So we know that the family is operating as separate individuals because they're reading their, keyword, plural, pronoun, favorite books. So we're going to choose were. Many a. Whenever you start a sentence with many a, it takes singular, even though I have a compound joined by an. So many a sophomore and junior is participating. Okay, pronoun usage. If I get rid of Brendan, I would say I am keeping in touch. The winners were linking verb, predicate, nominative, we. When nobody was more surprised than incomplete construction, they were surprised. James saw Curry coming, dribbled around his own back, and eluded Johnson and him. So if I got rid of Johnson, I would say eluded him. He had to pass to blank was open. So I look at the subordinate clause, and I know that this is my verb. So I need a subject, and the subject takes nominative case. Therefore, I go with whoever. Whoever was open. I would say he was open, she was open, they was open, who was open. Do you think it was linking verb, nominative case, he who received the award? Everyone applauded when he took a bow, and the coach has turned them into the best team. Okay? Now we're taking a look at verb usage. Up towards the clouds rose the jet. Okay, the jet rose toward the clouds. Many Native American people have traditionally, and we have an object, so if there is an object, I have to go with raised corn. Set the groceries carefully down, putting and placing. She put or placed, laid her handbag. I have an object. If I'm resting and reclining, were you lying there before dinner? And the beached rowboat, I'm saying resting and reclining, lay on its side. That's the past tense of lie. Okay, moving into vocabulary. The protagonist, Peyton Farquhar's blank sense of hearing, could detect the ticking of his watch, like the hammer on a, well, you know that's got to be anvil. So process of elimination would tell you that it's his keen sense of hearing and the anvil. Perhaps the persistent rowing of the oiler in the open boat presaged his death, predicted his death, not his virtues. While the correspondent in that story portrayed himself as a cynical, probably a noun going here, nonconformist, he cherished the sublime beauty. Sorry about that. Once a blank patriot, an officer of the U.S. of America, Robert E. Lee had his blank questioned. So he was once an ardent patriot, but he had his honor questioned. Lee's reputation has not been totally blanked by scholars. So I know I'm definitely going to be past tense. Has not been totally maligned. So what is that, AE? In his famous letter, Lee blanked that secession is revolution. Lee pontificates. And there's a delicate balance between civil war and anarchy. So I guess that's AB. In a Wagner matinee, Georgiana did not listen to the blank of her family, the admonitions of her family, the warnings of her family. She was left in emotional straits. The soothing, serene sounds of the Aeolian harps, right? We're out of tune with the odious shrill of the bagpipes. Okay, moving right along. We want to find a synonym for perusal. Perusal is inspection. Acclivity is an incline. Okay, hallow, as we heard in the Gettysburg Address, is sacred ground. Dictum is a rule. Ineffable means you can't even describe it. It's unutterable. Marrow is getting to the core of things. Latent is something that's hidden or dormant. Impudent is someone who's disrespectful, or the act of being disrespectful. Expedient is, without expedient, without benefit. And luster is brilliance. And emancipation is obviously freedom. Okay, so in Transcendentalism, we had 4 works of literature, 2 by Emerson, 2 by Thoreau. Which one emphasized the need to simplify? That's got to be Walden. Which explored a deep mystical connection between the divine and the natural. As soon as we start talking about mystical, divine, we have to go to nature. Proposed that it was more important to cultivate respect for right than respect for law. That is civil disobedience. Anything with government is probably going to be civil disobedience. Involved in an experiment that included building a cabin in the woods is Walden. Discuss the true nature of genius as being able to listen to the gleam of light within. Self-reliance. Prove that the majority only rules because it's strongest, not because it's right. Civil disobedience. Seeing the world outside through the eyes of an adult or a child, a woodcutter or a poet. That's nature. Declared envy is ignorance, imitation suicide. Self-reliance. Encourage the belief that one should not take a cabin passage and instead go before the mast. That's clearly Walden. Being in nature, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. That is A. If there was something wrong on the answer key, that was one of the questions that I gave credit for. She made her journeys to see me in the night, traveling long distances. This is Douglas's mother. The circumstances described here point to the brutal separation of mother and child. Now, he says she would lie down with me and get me to sleep, but long before I wake, she was gone. One of the sad consequences of this situation is that when his mother actually does die, he doesn't really grieve. It was as if she were a stranger, because she essentially was. What he most dreaded, I most desired. What he most loved, I most hated. And that which was to him a great evil was to me a great good. Who is the he? That's Mr. Auld. What's the great evil? Learning how to read. And to whom does he turn for help? The white children in the neighborhood. The framers of our Constitution never exhausted so much labor, wisdom, and forbearance in its formation if it was intended to be broken by every member of the Confederacy at will. That's Robert E. Lee in a letter to his family. When he refers to the Constitution, he's trying to point out that secession is wrong. Earlier in the same literary piece, the writer alludes to one founding father who would be grieved if he could see the wreck of his mighty labors. And who was that founding father? Washington, because he received a book about Washington by Edward Everett, the orator who performed at Gettysburg before Lincoln recited his address. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. This is Gettysburg Address. Based upon his words here, what kind of man was he? He was humble and modest, but strong in conviction. Why does he deliver these words? He delivers them on a rainy day in November at the dedication of a cemetery in Gettysburg. What is the unfinished work that he's talking about? Fighting the war. It's not over yet. We still must fight. O captain, my captain, rise up and hear the bells. Rise up, for you the flag is flung, for you the bugle trills. For you bouquets and ribboned wreaths, for you the shores a-crowding. For you they call, the swaying mast, their eager faces turning. These lines, penned by Whitman, emphasize the celebration that ensued because the Union won the war. In the poem, the certain lines are followed by contrasting ones of cold and blood and death. When they're placed side by side like that, it's called juxtaposition. Who is the metaphorical captain? Lincoln. In Owl Creek Bridge, we know that the bridge crosses a river in northern Alabama, and it's a train bridge. The man about to be executed by hanging is no vulgar assassin. He is a gentleman planter. The alleged criminal had intended to burn the bridge. The Union's plans were revealed by a spy, a Federal scout. The shining bits of metal spraying the water around him actually lodges between his collar and his neck. All of these are examples of his sharp senses. He can see the gray eye. He can see prismatic colors of a dewdrop. He can hear the ticking of his watch. He just can't taste the sweet, tart lemonade. The story suggests that what people experience in their minds is equally as real as a physical experience. He believes he's actually getting home. In Jumping Frog, who narrates the story about Jim Smiley? Well, it's Simon Wheeler who narrates that story within a story. Why did people generally bet against his animals? Because his animals were sickly looking and didn't appear as if they would be successful. The example that best shows his addiction to gambling is when he places a bet on the health of Parson Walker's wife. The stranger definitely got the best of Jim Smiley by filling Daniel Webster, who is a frog, with quail shot or lead. How does the excerpt, The Open Boat, exhibit naturalism? Here's the excerpt about the salty wall of water, blah, 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 that the ocean controls the boat's fate. The boat in which the men find themselves is no bigger than a bathtub, and it's like riding in a bucking bronco. Describing the gulls as staring with black bead-like eyes expresses a dark, threatening mood. What character is injured? The captain. The correspondent remembers a poem. What was the subject of the poem? It was about a soldier who died far away from his home. The only man to not survive, ironically, is the oiler. And that's definitely an example of irony. In a Wagner matinee, what is this one central conflict? I think you would probably have to say hard life on the prairie versus cultured life of Boston. All of these are descriptions of Aunt Georgiana, except dressed in all the colors of a sunlit landscape. She's wearing a soiled duster. Clark wants to take her to the Wagner matinee because he wants to repay her for the wonderful memories that she's given him. What are the final two lines of the story? As we see here, I understood, for outside the door of the concert hall lay the black pond, etc., etc. Her regret and tears over having made the wrong choices. In Story of an Hour, why is Josephine afraid to tell Mrs. Mallard that her husband has died? That's because Louise has a health problem, a heart problem. What's ironic about the sounds she hears after she's been told of his death? All the sounds are of life. Something was coming to Louise and she was afraid. She was waiting for it fearfully. What was it? It probably is the sense of freedom, and she's very scared about the prospect of being free. And then what happens at the end of the story that changes everything? Mr. Mallard is alive. Okay, on to The Great Gatsby. Nick's comment that about Tom, that something was making him nibble at the edge of stale ideas, suggests that he is not satisfied with his life. D. The Valley of Ashes is located between West Egg and New York City. At Myrtle and Tom's apartment, one of the biscuits decomposes apathetically all afternoon. What does this show? It shows the moral indifference that people have, the people that Nick sees have, people around him. Why does Nick attend Gatsby's party? Because he was invited. An awkward moment occurs for Nick at the party when he actually talks to a man about Gatsby, not even realizing that it is Gatsby. One final impression Nick has of Gatsby as he leaves the party is one involving his isolation. Remember, he's all by himself, doesn't talk as he's saying goodbye, and the people are driving away. To whom is Nick referring when he says she had begun dealing in subterfuges when she was very young, and she had a cool, insolent smile? That's got to be Jordan. Which one doesn't fit Meyer? Well, he definitely has human teeth for cufflinks. He definitely fixed the World Series. He speaks of his association with Rosie Rosenthal, but he does not have speech that's well educated. In the following excerpt, see which statement is true. Then it had not been merely the stars to which he had aspired on that June night. He came alive to me, delivered suddenly from the womb of his purposeless splendor. In Nick's mind, Gatsby is reborn as a man with a dream. Why was Daisy crying? She was overwhelmed by the beauty of his shirts, literally. James Gatz had been loafing along the beach that afternoon, but it was already Jay Gatsby, who borrowed a rowboat and pulled out to the Tulalum, informing Cody that a wind might catch him and break him up. This is a guy who takes advantage of every opportunity. Gatsby is convinced that he can repeat the past. Of course you can, old sport. During lunch at the Buchanans, Daisy remarks, "You always look so cool." What's the significance of that? That is when Daisy's just revealed that she's in love with him, and Tom notices it. Locked in her room above the gas station, Myrtle thinks that Jordan is Tom's wife. A couple more. Which is not true regarding Myrtle's death? That Tom and Nick witnessed it. They weren't there. What does Nick observe at the end of chapter 7? That Daisy and Tom are planning something. Who is the ashen figure going through the bushes? That is Wilson. Klipspringer calls because he's trying to get his tennis shoes mailed to him. After Nick meets Tom briefly on a city street, Nick imagines that Tom is buying a pearl necklace and a pair of cufflinks. He's no better than the underworld gangster Meyer Wolfsheim. It's just that he's rich, that's all. On the last page of the book, Nick connects Gatsby's dream with that of the Dutch sailors by linking his green light with the green breast of the New World. Okay, and then you've got your reading passages, and then the essay topics that you had, which were very, very good last time around. You had to choose one from here and one from here. But this time you have some flexibility, and you have that third topic that you have already been given. Okay, so that's it for trimester 2.